I'm the family disappointment, and honestly, I'm thriving. Part 1, the day I realized I was never part of the family. There wasn't a dramatic blowout. No screaming match. No holiday disaster that made me storm out with mashed potatoes in my hand and tears in my eyes. My black sheep status didn't happen all at once, it showed up in small moments. Like a slow leak that warps the foundation over time. But I remember the day I stopped pretending. It was a Wednesday. My dad called and told me my younger brother got promoted at work. The whole family was meeting up for dinner to celebrate. He rattled off names: Mom, my sisters, my cousins. Even my uncle who lives 2 states away. I waited for him to say my name. He didn't. I asked, so, should I come? There was this pause. Short. Sharp. Long enough to cut. Then, well, it's kind of just a close family thing. I wanted to laugh. Because what was I, if not family? I hung up. Sat on my couch. And let the silence confirm what I already knew: I wasn't invited. Not really. Not ever. The weirdest part? I wasn't surprised. I think, deep down, I've always known I was different. I didn't follow the family blueprint. I didn't go into finance. I didn't marry my high school sweetheart. I didn't get a mortgage by 28 and start popping out holiday cards with matching outfits and golden retrievers. I moved out at 19. I lived with roommates in a dingy apartment where the stove didn't work and our living room smelled like incense and ramen noodles. I worked 2 jobs and wore thrifted jackets and made friends with drag queens and artists and people who read banned books for fun. And somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to explain myself to people who didn't want to understand me. But that dinner? That moment where I didn't even make the maybe list. That was the first time I let the door close. The funny thing about being the black sheep is that it's not just about being different. It's about being punished for it. When I skipped college to freelance and start my own photography gig, they said I was wasting potential. When I got a tattoo, my aunt didn't speak to me for 2 months. When I came out as bisexual, my cousin sent me a Bible verse and my dad said he just needed time to process. I gave them time. Years of time. And all it earned me was less space at the table and more whispers behind my back at reunions. But I don't say any of this to get pity. This isn't a sob story. It's a reclamation. Because now, I don't want a seat at that table. The one where everyone's smiling but secretly judging. The one where people say things like, "We just want what's best for you," when what they really mean is, "Why can't you be more like us?" I've made my own table. And yeah, it's smaller. But the people around it, they see me. They get me. They don't roll their eyes when I talk about queer literature or astrology or how capitalism is slowly killing us. They bring weird snacks to game night and cry openly during movies and hug for slightly too long. It's not perfect. But it's mine. Part 2, when you learn to smile through rejection. I think I was 12 the first time I realized I wasn't like the rest of them. It wasn't some big moment. It was more like patterns. My older sister was the golden child. On a roll, prom queen, recruited to play college volleyball. She had straight white teeth, a Pinterest-perfect wardrobe, and knew how to make every adult in the room adore her in under 3 minutes. I was the kid who forgot to brush their hair. I didn't like sports. I didn't raise my hand in class unless I was 100% sure of the answer. I liked drawing sad girls in journals and reading fantasy novels during lunch instead of gossiping about boys. I had no interest in fitting in, because I didn't understand what I was supposed to fit into. And the adults noticed. "Why can't you be more like your sister? You're so quiet, are you okay? You'd be pretty if you just tried a little harder." They said it like they were helping. But what they were really doing was carving away at who I was, piece by piece. And for a long time, I let them. I spent most of my teen years trying to decode the family's expectations. Get good grades, but don't be too obsessed with school, or you'll come off weird. Have opinions, but don't contradict your uncles during dinner, or you'll be disrespectful. Express yourself, but keep it light, keep it safe, keep it palatable. I was constantly filtering my identity to make other people more comfortable. And when that didn't work, I blamed myself. Maybe I really was too sensitive. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe if I dressed like them, or acted more like my cousin who always brought deviled eggs and knew when to keep quiet, I'd finally be accepted. Spoiler, I wasn't. When I was 16, I came out to my mom. I didn't plan it. It just sort of slipped out during an argument. She was yelling about me, shutting people out, and I snapped. I'm bisexual, okay? That's why I don't bring anyone home. I don't want to deal with this crap. She froze. Didn't scream. Didn't cry. Just sat there, completely still. And then she said, "Well, don't expect your father to be okay with this." That was it. No, I love you anyway. No, you're brave for telling me. Just, prepare to be a disappointment. After that, I stopped trying to explain myself. I still showed up to family functions. Smiled for photos. Played nice. But inside, I was already miles away. I started spending more holidays with friends. Traveled during big events. Took more hours at work just to avoid being free when the next birthday dinner rolled around. And no one really noticed. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. Because when a black sheep walks out of the herd, the flock doesn't chase them. They just graze and move on like nothing changed. But the truth is, I didn't leave because I hated them. I left because I finally stopped hating myself. I stopped waiting for their approval like it was something I had to earn. I stopped editing myself down to fit into their narrative. I stopped asking for a seat at a table where the menu never changed. And I started building something different. Part 3, Family isn't blood, it's who shows up. People always say, you can't choose your family, but I don't think that's true anymore. Sure, you can't choose who shares your DNA. But you can absolutely choose who shows up when it matters. Who sits next to you in the dark. Who listens without fixing. Who celebrates you without asking you to shrink. That's what I found in my chosen family. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow. It started in college, with a roommate who noticed when I stopped eating during finals and made sure to leave tea and toast outside my door. With a coworker who offered to walk me home after late-night shifts and never once made it weird. With a barista who remembered my name before I remembered theirs and who smiled every time I walked through the door like I wasn't just some forgettable face in a long line. Tiny things. They stacked up. Eventually, those people became my people. Game nights in cramped apartments. Group chats that went from memes to mental health check-ins. Dinners made from whatever was in the fridge and eaten cross-legged on the floor. Long talks about trauma and dreams and the weird in-between where we all seem to live. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a guest. I didn't feel like a mistake. I didn't feel like I was constantly being compared to someone who'd always win just because they played the game better. I felt home. There were no backhanded compliments. No, you'd be prettier if. No, are you sure you want to wear that? No silence when I said something vulnerable. There was just room. Room to be messy. To be sad. To be loud and unfiltered and unsure and hopeful all at once. We weren't perfect. We missed birthdays. We overbooked and forgot to text back sometimes. But when the big things hit, breakups, panic attacks, job loss, grief, we were there. No questions. No performance. Just love. That's when I realized, being the black sheep isn't about being broken. It's about being awake. You see the cracks in the system everyone else is trying to pretend isn't crumbling. You feel things louder, and instead of numbing out, you name them. You call out cycles. You disrupt patterns. You leave tables that expect your silence and call it manners. And when you do that, you start attracting people who've done the same. Other black sheep. Other misfits and feelers and quiet revolutionaries. And suddenly, you're not alone anymore. That realization changed everything. It didn't erase the pain of the past. But it made room for something better. A life built not on pretending, but on presence. A life where love didn't feel like a performance review. A life where I didn't need to earn my seat, I just pulled one up, and someone handed me a plate. Part 4, Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors that lock from the inside. There's this myth that once you walk away from toxic family dynamics, you magically feel healed. Like leaving the group chat means your trauma gets deleted too. But that's not how it works. Healing isn't a moment. It's a choice you make every day. Some days it's a boundary. Some days it's forgiveness. Some days it's not replying to a message you know will only hurt you. And some days, it's just getting through the damn day without letting old wounds reopen. For me, it started with small boundaries. Not showing up to dinners that felt more like auditions. Not explaining myself when someone asked, "So what exactly do you do now?" with that smirk that made it sound like failure. And yeah, some people were offended. Some relatives said I was being difficult. That I'd changed. They were right. I had. I started saying no. To gatherings that left me drained. To conversations that turned into judgment in disguise. To fake apologies that only came after someone else called them out. At first, I felt guilty. Like I was abandoning people. Like I was giving up. But then I realized, every time I said yes to them, I was saying no to myself. No to rest. No to safety. No to being seen and held instead of constantly being watched and evaluated. So I stopped. And slowly, I began to feel something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Safe. Then something unexpected happened. My uncle, my dad's brother, the one who always stayed quiet at family events, never really involved in drama, texted me out of the blue. It was a simple message. "Hey. Just wanted to say I admire the way you carry yourself. I know things have been weird with the family. But I see you. And I'm proud of you." I didn't even know what to say. I'd written him off like the rest of them. Thought he didn't notice. Thought he didn't care. But maybe he was just silent. Like me. Just trying to survive in a family that taught you to stay quiet or be cast out. His message cracked something open. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from the people who hurt you, but from the ones who finally speak up. We grabbed coffee a week later. He told me he left home at 17 and never really came back emotionally. That he knew what it was like to be the outsider. That he saw the same in me. It was the first time someone from my bloodline made me feel seen without trying to edit who I was. And it reminded me, not everyone who shares your DNA is your enemy. But also, not everyone who shares your blood deserves your story. Boundaries gave me space to figure out who those people were. Who I could let in. Who I needed to keep out. And most importantly, who I could become when I wasn't constantly protecting myself from the people who were supposed to love me. Part 5. Becoming myself without their permission. You don't realize how loud someone else's voice has become in your head until it finally goes quiet. When I started building boundaries and walking away from the roles I was expected to play, there was this weird silence inside me. Like, now what? Who am I when I'm not trying to impress or prove or survive? It felt empty at first. But then, slowly, it started to fill with something better. Me. Not the version of me that filtered everything through family approval. But the messy, weird, wild one I buried years ago because she didn't fit into their mold. She liked photography and wrote short poems that were sometimes terrible and sometimes magic. She cried at animated movies and said, "I love you," first and danced while brushing her teeth and believed that gut instincts were a kind of superpower. I started writing again. Not for school. Not for a blog. Just for me. Little notes in my phone. Voice memos. Doodles that turned into stories. I started painting too, badly, at first. Abstract stuff. Scribbles and swirls. It wasn't about skill. It was about the joy of making something. Of putting something into the world that didn't ask for validation. It was healing in motion. I also started therapy. I was nervous. Afraid I'd be told I was dramatic. That I was overreacting. That the trauma I couldn't name would somehow be too small to count. But my therapist never said any of that. She said, "You don't need a scar to prove you were hurt." And just like that, something unlocked. We talked about family roles. About enmeshment. About how guilt was the leash used to keep me in line. About how you can be gaslit without anyone ever raising their voice, just by being told, over and over, that your version of events was wrong. For the first time, someone validated what I already knew in my bones. That I hadn't made it up. That the pain was real. That choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's survival. And that maybe, just maybe, I was more than a black sheep. Maybe I was the only one brave enough to leave the herd. The biggest shift came when I told my story out loud. First in a support group. Then in a writing workshop. Then in a video I uploaded late one night, unsure if I'd even keep it posted. The comments started rolling in. This is my story too. I thought I was the only one. I needed to hear this tonight. And that's when I realized, the thing I was most ashamed of, being the outsider, was the thing that connected me to more people than I ever imagined. There are more of us than they want us to believe. People who walked away. People who chose peace. People who built new families out of scrap and softness and shared survival. We're not broken. We're awake. Part 6, the invitation that didn't feel like a threat. It came in the mail. An actual envelope. Thick paper. Gold foil. My name, my full name, written in careful, cursive letters I didn't recognize. Inside, an invitation. Family reunion. Hosted at my cousin's house. Potluck style. All the usual suspects. I hadn't been to one in years. Not since I stopped showing up and no one asked why. The last time I went, I spent most of it smiling through gritted teeth while people asked things like, "So what are you doing now?" Still, experimenting with all that art stuff. Don't you miss how close everyone used to be? I used to shrink in those moments. Try to play along. Lie with a smile and say, yeah, just figuring things out. But this time, something was different. I wasn't scared. I wasn't angry either. I was just curious. Because when you've spent enough time away from a toxic environment, it loses its power. The people don't change. But you do. I sat with the invite for 3 days. Left it on the counter. Read it once every morning like it was a horoscope I didn't believe in. And then I decided. I'd go. But on my terms. I didn't tell anyone. Didn't text my sister. Didn't ask if Uncle Passive-Aggressive was coming. Didn't coordinate outfits or bring my good energy just to make everyone else comfortable. I put on a soft shirt that made me feel like myself. Brought a tray of cookies from my favorite queer-owned bakery. And drove there with the windows down and no expectations. That was the secret. I wasn't showing up to be included. I was showing up as a witness to how far I'd come. The house was full of familiar voices. Laughter that always sounded just a little performative. Hugs that lasted a beat too long or not long enough. Some people lit up when they saw me. Others froze, unsure how to react. One aunt gave me the once-over and said, "You look different." "Yeah," I said. "I feel different." No explanation. No apology. To my surprise, my sister walked up to me with a plate of snacks and said, "Hey. I'm glad you came." "Thanks," I replied. "Me too." She didn't make it weird. Didn't launch into a speech about the past. Just, let me be. And for once, that was enough. I spent most of the afternoon on the patio, sipping a drink and catching up with the few cousins who'd always made me feel safe. We didn't talk about family politics. We talked about bad dates, weird dreams, astrology, and our shared obsession with tiny home videos. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And that was more than I ever expected to find in that space again. Before I left, my dad came over. We hadn't spoken in a while. Not really. He looked tired. Older than I remembered. "You doing okay?" he asked, like small talk might soften the years. "I'm doing better," I said. "A lot better, actually." He nodded, but didn't say more. And that was okay. Because I wasn't there to fix anything. I was there to live in the truth I'd built, and leave when I felt ready. Which I did. Without guilt. Without waiting for permission. Part 7, Tolerated versus Loved, there's a difference. There's this weird moment of clarity that hits you after years of trying to earn the bare minimum. You realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. I used to think being invited meant I was wanted. That being acknowledged meant I was valued. That being tolerated was close enough to being loved. But it's not. Being tolerated is conditional. It's love with footnotes. It's, we love you, if you behave. It's, we accept you, as long as you don't make us uncomfortable. Real love? Real love doesn't flinch when you say something messy. It doesn't disappear when you change. It doesn't keep score or call you dramatic or tell you to tone it down at dinner. Real love says, I'm listening, even when it doesn't fully get it. And for the first time, I had enough of it, from myself, from my chosen family, that I didn't need to settle for the knockoff version anymore. After the reunion, I noticed something shift. Not in them. In me. I stopped over-explaining. Stopped rehearsing texts before I sent them. Stopped trying to make my existence more palatable just to keep someone else comfortable. I let go of the version of me that played small just to keep the peace. And the people who loved me? They didn't leave. They leaned in. They asked real questions. They showed up without needing a performance. My therapist once said, the version of you they liked was the one who abandoned yourself. That hit hard. Because for years, I thought my family's approval meant I was doing something right. But what if it meant I was doing something wrong? What if every compliment they gave me was about how well I disappeared? And now that I was visible, loud, weird, soft, queer, creative, boundary-setting me, they weren't sure how to handle it. That wasn't my problem anymore. I stopped mistaking guilt for loyalty. Stopped mistaking silence for peace. Stopped mistaking proximity for connection. And in that space, something better bloomed. I felt lighter. Like my body finally caught up to the freedom my heart had claimed years ago. Part 8, the quiet, underrated joy of being unapologetically you. It didn't happen all at once. There was no light bulb moment or dramatic sunrise that changed everything. But one day, I noticed something. I was happy. Not performative happy. Not, I'm fine, happy. Not the fake it till you collapse kind of happy I used to wear like a uniform around my family. Just, content. I caught myself humming while washing dishes. Laughing at dumb memes alone in my bed. Saying no to things I didn't want to do without following it up with a novel of excuses. Letting myself rest without earning it. Letting myself be soft without justifying it. That kind of joy. It hits different when you've spent your whole life twisting yourself to fit. I used to think I was broken. Too emotional. Too sensitive. Too much. But now I know, I was never too much. I was just in the wrong rooms. Around the wrong people. People who confused control for love. Stability for silence. Respect for obedience. But once I stopped asking for their validation, I started finding people who looked me in the eye and said, you don't have to perform here. You're safe here. I like the messy version of you, too. That changed everything. Because when you're no longer bracing for rejection, you open yourself to connection. And it shows up in the most unexpected places. A stranger on the internet who sends a voice note saying your writing helped them through a bad week. A friend who texts, call me when you're spiraling, I want to be there. A partner who doesn't flinch when you cry mid-sentence, but instead scoots closer and says, let it out. I've got you. Those moments stacked up. And slowly, the parts of me that had been hiding for years came out. Not all at once. But enough to feel whole again. I stopped bracing for backlash every time I shared an opinion. Stopped scanning rooms for safety exits. Stopped second-guessing my emotions like they were liabilities. I even started hosting my own little gatherings, picnics, dinners, game nights. And people came. Not because I begged. But because they wanted to. And when we sat around my mismatched furniture and drank cheap wine and laughed so loud the neighbors knocked once, only once, I realized something. I had built the kind of space I'd been chasing my whole life. And it was mine. All mine. Part 9, the power in naming yourself. The term, black sheep, used to sting. It felt like exile. Like a punishment. Like proof I had failed some invisible test everyone else seemed to pass with ease. But now, I wear it like a badge. Not out of spite. But because it fits better than anything they ever tried to dress me in. Being the black sheep doesn't mean I'm lost. It means I refused to follow a path that led to someone else's version of happiness. It means I chose authenticity over assimilation. And yeah, it cost me. It cost me closeness with people I once idolized. It cost me the illusion that love and approval were the same thing. It cost me years of questioning whether I was worth loving at all. But it gave me something better. It gave me me. Looking back, I don't regret the fights I didn't start. The arguments I walked away from. The birthdays I missed. The chairs I left empty at family gatherings. Because I wasn't abandoning them. I was choosing me. I was choosing peace. And the version of me who used to shrink in those rooms? She deserves to see what life looks like outside of them. Now, when people call me the black sheep, I smile. Because I know what they're really saying is. You didn't let us mold you. You found a way out. You stopped pretending. I know what it's like to lose everything you thought you needed, and still come out whole. I know what it's like to rewrite your own origin story. To move through shame and end up in sovereignty. To stop asking for a seat at the table and build your own damn dining room instead. The life I live now isn't perfect. There are still hard days. Still grief for the connection I wish I had with my family. Still moments where a childhood memory hits me like a punch and I want to cry for the kid who never felt like enough. But I don't live there anymore. I don't unpack my bags in that sadness. I visit. I honor it. I keep it company when I need to. Then I come back to the life I've built. The one that fits. The one that holds me. Part 10, I'd rather be the black sheep than a silent one. When I think about who I used to be, it's like watching an old home video. A version of me who smiled on cue. Who laughed when the joke was at their expense. Who kept showing up to dinners just to prove they were still part of the family. That version of me wanted so badly to be accepted. To feel normal. To stop wondering what was wrong with them. But now I know, there was never anything wrong with me. There was something wrong with the space I was forced to exist in. A space that only had room for one type of voice, one kind of success, one definition of love. And I never fit in that box, not because I failed, but because I wasn't meant to be contained. Now, I'm loud in the ways they told me not to be. Tender in ways they saw as weakness. Soft in ways that still feel radical. I cry without shame. I love without pretense. I leave when something hurts more than it heals. I don't explain my decisions to people who weren't part of the pain. I don't chase connection with people who only knew how to love me when I was performing. I'm the black sheep. And I'm proud of that. Because black sheep don't blend in. We challenge tradition. We see the patterns. We break the rules that were written to control, not protect. We leave homes and build sanctuaries. We lose families and create communities. We burn bridges that only ever led to pain. And we do it all with the hope that one day, someone else will see our smoke and realize they're not alone. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family. If you've ever stayed quiet to keep the peace, even when it broke your heart. If you've ever looked around and thought, why do I feel like a stranger around the people who are supposed to love me most? Let me say this. You are not broken. You are not a failure. You are not the problem. You're just awake. And it's okay to walk away. It's okay to protect your peace. It's okay to choose yourself, even when it makes you the black sheep. Because the people who truly love you, they'll never ask you to go silent just to stay close. Thanks for staying with me through this whole story. If any part of it made you feel seen, even just for a second, then I'm glad I shared it. Being the black sheep isn't easy. But it's not a curse. It's a sign you were never meant to stay in places that didn't recognize your worth. I'm still learning. Still growing. Still unlearning what love shouldn't feel like. And if you are too, you're not alone. This is a brand new channel, and I'd love your thoughts, whether it's feedback, support, or your own story. Drop a comment. Let's talk. Let's build a space for people who got tired of shrinking. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a soft, quiet, peaceful kind of day, the kind we all deserve. See you in the next story.